Today we're diving headfirst into the entire Rambo saga, watching all 5 films in chronological order. This action-packed series isn't just iconic, it helped define the modern action genre. Explosive battles, brutal survival, and one unstoppable soldier pushed to his absolute limit. If you've never experienced all the Rambo movies from start to finish, trust me, you've been missing out. Let's get into it. First Blood begins with a man named John Rambo arriving at a small lakeside settlement looking for his old friend Delmar Barry, but his mother tells him that Delmar isn't here. Rambo shows her the address written by Delmar, explaining that they are old friends who served together in Vietnam, and even shows her a picture of their unit. She reveals that Delmar died last summer because of cancer, and she believes that it was caused by Agent Orange, a chemical herbicide used by the US military as part of its warfare program in Vietnam. Rambo sadly hands her the picture of Delmar and apologizes before walking away. He aimlessly walks to the town of Hope in Washington, where he is stopped by the sheriff named Will Teasel, who offers to give him a ride outside Hope after confirming that Rambo isn't visiting anyone here. Rambo wonders if he can grab something to eat in the town, but Will tells him to go to the diner 30 miles away. Rambo questions why Will is hostile, as he hasn't done anything harmful, but Will tells him that he can't tolerate any drifters in his area. He explains that their town doesn't have any crime, and he gets paid to keep it that way.
In fact, you might say it's boring. But that's the way we like it.
Will drops Rambo off outside the bridge and advises him to get a haircut and a bath, as that would make him look more decent. However, Rambo starts walking towards the town again, making Will come back and forcing him to put his hands against the car. Will checks him and pulls out a field knife hidden under Rambo's clothes and doesn't believe Rambo when he says that he uses it for hunting. He takes Rambo to the precinct and leaves him to be processed under the supervision of his cruel chief deputy named Art Galt, charging Rambo with vagrancy, resisting arrest, and carrying a concealed weapon. Galt takes him downstairs where he asks for his name, but Rambo refuses to answer, so they forcefully take off his dog tags and run a check on him. Rambo still refuses to put his thumbprint on the report, and Will joins them, telling Rambo that he will be facing the judge tomorrow, who is going to charge him for a 90-day incarceration and a $250 fine. Will tells them to clean him up, so Galt strips him and beats him up before using a high-pressure water hose. Galt next chokes him so the others can cut his hair, but just as the blade comes near Rambo, it triggers a flashback of the torture he underwent in Vietnam, making him shout and push back all the officers wanting to fight his way out.
Come on!
He ends up taking his knife back before stealing a motorcycle. Will chases him in his car, but Rambo drives into the mountains, jumping down ditches, and Will follows him using alternative routes until Will's car falls and flips over. Will gets out of the car with minor injuries and runs after Rambo, who also falls off the motorcycle because of how steep the mountain is. Rambo runs off and hides while Will screams that they'll catch him because he can't go that far on foot. Up on the top, Rambo finds a hidden cabin near a broken truck from where he picks up a rope and a worn-out rag. Meanwhile, backup arrives at the mountain. So Will tells one of the officers named Lester to contact Officer Orville and bring the dogs to locate Rambo. He also tells one of them to go to the base so they can get a helicopter. On the other hand, Rambo makes clothes with the rag, so he can camouflage and head further up on the mountain. Elsewhere, the search party is launched with the guards leading the team up the mountain. But one of them worries about their safety, since Rambo broke out of the police station filled with several officers easily. Rambo reaches the point where the only way left is to jump down the mountain into the river. So he tries to go back, but he hears the sounds of the search party and decides to descend the mountain. However, he is trapped because Galt arrives in the helicopter and ignores Will's orders to bring Rambo alive, as he attempts to shoot Rambo from a low-flying helicopter. He misses 2 shots and Rambo eventually jumps down while his fall is slowed down by various branches that he hits before reaching the ground. Will screams that he doesn't want Rambo dead, but Galt doesn't listen and tries to shoot Rambo, who is now hiding behind a tree. Rambo eventually picks up a stone and throws it at the helicopter, making Galt fall to his death as the pilot loses control. Rambo takes Galt's clothes and his gun before running away to a hiding spot to stitch his injuries. He then goes back to the surface where he tries to surrender himself, saying that he didn't kill Galt and doesn't want anyone else to be harmed, but he is fired upon by the deputies, so he flees into the tree line. Will calls Officer Lester to ask about the chopper, but Lester explains that they've refused to help them as a storm is coming. Lester reveals that Rambo is a former Special Forces soldier and recipient of the Medal of Honor, making him a war hero, but Will refuses to cancel the search. The officers around him suggest that they let the state police handle it, but Will becomes aggressive and forces Mitch to look at Galt's dead body, saying they need to avenge him. The dogs start getting faster as the scent becomes stronger and Orville lets the dogs loose upon seeing Rambo. They open fire once they are shot upon by Rambo, but soon realize that he has escaped and what they are shooting at isn't Rambo but a scarecrow planted by him. However, Orville says that the dog can smell him nearby and lets the last one loose only to hear its whining sound a minute later as it gets stuck in a trap. Will goes to check on Orville and finds him shot, so he ties a tourniquet around him, telling him to release it every 15 minutes, assuring him that he'll be back soon. Will and the 4 officers spread out and start searching for Rambo, until Mitch comes across him, hiding under a patch of leaves, but Rambo quickly stabs Mitch's leg, making him scream in pain and get the attention of the rest of the officers. However, as they rush to Mitch, Rambo gets on top of a tree and jumps on another officer, so Will orders them all to spread out instead of gathering at the same place. Rambo stands in front of another officer and tricks them into shooting at each other. The rest get stuck in traps made by Rambo using bushcraft, and Will comes forward looking for an officer but finds Singleton's neck tied to a tree, almost choking him. Suddenly, Rambo shows up to threaten Will at knife point to abandon his pursuit before fleeing further into the woods, making Will slide down the tree and weep. Will and his injured team descend the mountain along with the dead body, where they get medical treatment, and Washington State Patrol officers and National Guard forces are dispatched to assist with the search. A news channel reports on the possible location of the fugitive, suggesting that he will be caught in a matter of hours. Dave Kern from the state police calls Will out after Lester reveals that Galt and the boys tried to torture Rambo. But Will says that if he had any complaints regarding the officers, he should have reported to the sheriff instead of turning rogue. They are joined by Rambo's former commanding officer, Colonel Samuel Troutman, who tells Will that he is there to rescue them from Rambo, but Will refuses to back out despite Samuel explaining that Rambo is an expert in guerrilla warfare. He adds that Rambo has been trained to survive harsh weather and kill his enemy. Meanwhile, Rambo hunts a bear and sets another trap in case someone comes after him. Back with Will, Samuel tells them to let Rambo go for now, create a false gap and let him slip to another city, as they'll find him working somewhere in a couple of weeks. But Will refuses despite Samuel explaining that this time all the people Will sends would get killed. Will says he has a sense of duty towards his people and plans to send 200 men, thinking Rambo has no chance against them. But Samuel tells him to prepare a large supply of body bags. Rambo is hiding in a cave, where he lights a fire to roast the bear meat, and hears Galt's radio announcing that all possible exits are blocked, so Rambo should surrender as his part in the service of the country will be considered to provide fair treatment to him. Will takes Samuel there and mockingly tells him to talk Rambo into sparing the lives of the officers, so Samuel decides to try. He calls Rambo by his team name Raven, and mentions the names of all his comrades to get his attention, eventually making him reply that all his teammates have died. Samuel asks about Delmar and Rambo explains that he died of cancer, which he got from Vietnam. Samuel tells him that he has done damage but he will come alone and fly him out of the mountain, which Rambo refuses, saying that there are no friendly civilians, as he just wanted to eat, but Will kept pushing at him. Rambo explains that it was the police who drew the first blood, and after that he stops responding. During this they locate Rambo's location, and Will orders men to be there as soon as the sun rises. At dawn, men march up the mountain, but Rambo is hiding near the stream and runs away from them. However, he runs across a volunteer boy and doesn't kill him since he finds him innocent, but the boy screams, making soldiers nearby open fire at Rambo. The soldiers change their path and open fire once they spot him, despite Will's instructions to bring him alive, while Rambo hides inside a mine. The National Guard leader, Lieutenant Clinton Morgan, tries to send some of his members to the abandoned mine, but when all refuse, he shouts for Rambo to surrender. Rambo doesn't respond to the call, so Morgan tells his men to fire an M72 Law to collapse the mine. Will reaches there on the helicopter and is angry. As they all assume Rambo is dead, Will tells Morgan to dig his body out of the rubble, and Samuel mocks Will for killing an honorable soldier for a vagrancy charge, but Will is adamant that Rambo killed a police officer, so he deserved it. However, Rambo makes it out alive, escaping the mine through a ventilation shaft, where he gets attacked by mice in the narrow pathway. He eventually escapes them and continues passing through the vent. Meanwhile, Samuel is having a drink when Will joins him and apologizes for being disrespectful earlier. Will confesses that he wanted to kill Rambo himself, and Samuel accepts that police officers often blur that line, as he and Rambo were ordered to kill whenever in doubt back in Vietnam. Elsewhere, Rambo comes out and finds a military transport truck heading towards the town, so he gets on it and hijacks it. The driver reveals that he has an M60 machine gun in the back, and Rambo eventually pushes him out of the car. The driver is picked up by a passing police car and quickly reports that Rambo is on the loose again. The police car chases the truck and shoots at it, but Rambo jams his truck into the car before hitting it repeatedly. He eventually pushes it into a stopped car, causing an explosion, and he enters the town by passing the bridge full of officers by driving over their cars. Rambo quickly takes the machine gun before causing a gas station explosion, forcing the officers to rush there, but the cars nearby start exploding and the officers run away to save themselves. Will quickly announces on loudspeakers for all civilians to evacuate the streets and remain at home until further instructions. Calling it a police emergency, Will loads his shotgun and picks up a bigger gun when Samuel shows up. He once again advises Will to cancel the pursuit, but Will is angry, knowing that Samuel trained Rambo to survive such harsh conditions. Samuel says that Will might die, as Rambo would only spare Samuel because he is like family to him, but Will says that it's his duty to protect his town. Meanwhile, firefighters try to put out the fire, and Lester reports that the highway has been blocked because of the incident. But Will doesn't listen because he rushes to the rooftop of the police station. From there, he checks the surroundings, but Rambo shoots a transformer, cutting the power to most of the town. He then heads inside a gun shop and destroys it while trying to find gunpowder. After that, he uses his M60 to shoot and ignite large quantities of gunpowder and ammunition stored inside, causing an enormous explosion. Rambo notices Will's head peeking out of the police station's roof and starts shooting indiscriminately in the sheriff's office, destroying it completely. Once all the lights go out, he heads inside while Will positions himself so he can shoot at the door. However, Rambo opens fire at the roof, hitting his leg and making him fall from the glass ceiling. Rambo is about to kill Will when Samuel shows up and tells Rambo to drop his weapon, as he will fly him to brag. Rambo is quiet, but various police cars surround the station and want to open fire, so Samuel quickly orders them to hold it. But Rambo takes a police gun and gets ready for the fight. However, Samuel stops him, telling him that this one-man war is over, and forces him to look at a large number of police officers outside the building ready to kill him. However, Rambo breaks down, saying it is his fight, before talking about the times people protested against the soldiers in Vietnam and called them vile names for committing war horrors, when it was the soldiers who underwent extreme trauma. He remembers his past of having ownership over equipment worth millions of dollars, while as a civilian the only job he has gotten is parking cars. He weeps, missing all the friends he had, saying he has seen them all die, with body parts of his friends falling all over him because of explosions, and that he still suffers from PTSD. He explains that he spent 7 years like that and he can't forget them, so he doesn't speak to people for weeks. He hugs Samuel and cries, so Samuel comforts him before escorting him into federal custody, while Will is taken by an ambulance to treat his injuries. Rambo First Blood Part 2 opens with John Rambo busy working in a prison labor camp when he is summoned by a guard who takes him to meet Colonel Samuel Troutman. Samuel is sorry to see Rambo's present state and offers him a role in a dangerous covert mission in Vietnam, which is to rescue American prisoners of war, suggesting the presidential pardon as a reward if he succeeds. He explains that Rambo is ideal for the mission, as he previously escaped a prison camp in the same area and has a good understanding of the terrain. Rambo agrees to the offer and is flown away to an American military base in Thailand, where he is welcomed by Erickson, a mercenary pilot working for the CIA, who takes him to meet Samuel and Marshal Murdoch, a CIA field operative overseeing the operation. Murdoch reads Rambo's file and finds it very interesting, after which he briefs him that he is supposed to infiltrate Vietnam to confirm the presence of 25 Americans who have gone missing in Southeast Asia, as they are allegedly held at a Vietnamese prisoners of war camp. Moreover, Murdoch stresses that Rambo must not engage the enemy, but only take photos to confirm the presence of the prisoners, who will then be rescued by a Delta force led by Samuel. Rambo reluctantly accepts the condition of avoiding engagement with the enemy, and Samuel leads him to the operations center, which is equipped with advanced technological equipment that Rambo will utilize. Samuel advises Rambo to make the best use of his equipment, as he will be going on the mission alone, but he will soon meet up with a native agent, Ko Bao. During all this, Murdoch thinks Rambo seems uninterested, making him doubt his reliability. But Samuel assures him that Rambo is the toughest Army veteran he has ever encountered. Later, Rambo gears up for the mission as the operations team finalizes his deployment plan. At night, Samuel escorts him to the plane, instructing him to return to the United States within 36 hours. He also informs him about the extraction point that lies on a hill, but before Rambo gets on the plane, he tells Samuel that he is skeptical of Murdoch and thinks that he is lying about his service with the Marines. As the plane takes off, Murdoch strolls towards the airstrip, and Samuel asks him about the chances of Rambo finding any prisoners of war, which Murdoch dismisses as unlikely and unimportant to him, as he has already done his job. Moments later, the plane flies over its destination, and Rambo jumps off, but accidentally gets stuck with the plane by a strap in his suit. An onboard soldier tries to free him but fails, so Rambo cuts off the strap to release himself. However, he loses most of his gear in the process, while he uses a parachute to go down. Back at the base, Samuel is informed that no flares were fired in the area for them to confirm whether Rambo landed safely, and Murdoch contemplates on aborting the mission, but Samuel protests that they should wait at least 36 hours in case Rambo has survived. In the morning, Rambo makes his way through the wild terrain of Vietnam to reach the meeting point, which he finds full of large statues. He finds someone watching him, so he hides before sneaking up behind the person to take them by surprise, only to discover that she is Agent Ko Bao, the native tasked with helping him. Bao claims to have arranged for a ride to reach the camp and guides him through the forest to a pirate base where they get on a boat. As they cross the river, the Americans at base camp desperately wait for any updates. On the way, Bao asks Rambo about how he got into the mission, so he tells her about his participation in the Vietnam War and the trauma issues that got him into trouble upon his return. Bao understands him, revealing that her father was an undercover agent who was replaced by her after his death. She also explains her dream of leaving the dangers of Vietnam for an easy life in the US, while Rambo claims to have fighting and survival as his only priorities, which makes him an expendable asset for the army. Back at the base, Samuel informs Murdoch that he is joining the team to go to the extraction point, but Murdoch thinks it is futile, as they don't even know if Rambo is alive. Samuel persists, so Murdoch agrees to let him accompany them. Later, Bao and Rambo reach the other end of the river, and they set out to cross the forest so they can get to the prisoners of war camp. The camp is heavily guarded, and only a worker from a nearby village riding a scooter is allowed to get in. Rambo gets ready to infiltrate the camp and uses his knife to get in through the barbed wire while Bao waits for him outside. He sneaks around the camp, avoiding any guards, to find the prisoners within the camp, and he eventually finds them in a poor condition. They are in a shabby, congested cage, with spiders and rats crawling all over them as they struggle with various diseases. Moments later, Rambo stumbles upon an American prisoner tied to an X, whom he frees and escorts through the forest, where they are almost spotted by a guard with his searchlight. A few steps ahead, another guard spots them crossing a stream, prompting Rambo to take him out with a throwing knife. As they move forward, another guard spots them from a tower, but Rambo quickly brings him down with an arrow while another guard closes in on Bao. But Rambo takes him out with another arrow, and then three of them sneak out of the camp to get on their way to the extraction point. In the morning, the extraction team gets ready for takeoff, while the Viet Cong start a search for the perpetrators after discovering the dead bodies. Meanwhile, Rambo, Bao, and the prisoner arrive at the river and get into the boat, but the Viet Cong gives chase in their military boat, and the pirate crew turns on Rambo. However, he fights back and shoots most of them dead, proceeding to blow up the enemy boat with a rocket launcher as Bao and the prisoner jumps off to avoid the boat's machine gun fire. When Rambo tries to jump off the boat, a surviving pirate gets a hold of him from behind and tries to choke him, but Rambo stabs him and gets off the boat before the enemy boat crashes into it. He swims to the bank and instructs Bao to leave while he proceeds to the extraction point with the prisoner. On their way, the Viet Cong spot them and start to bombard them with mortar shells as they run toward the extraction point on the hill. Moments later, Samuel and the extraction team arrive in their helicopter and proceed to shoot at the Viet Cong from above. Subsequently, Samuel confirms Rambo and the rescued prisoner's presence, but when Murdoch finds out about this, he forces everyone out of the operations center and orders Samuel to abort the mission. Samuel refuses to do so, but Erickson and the gunman subdue Samuel and fly away, leaving Rambo and the prisoner to be captured by the Viet Cong while Bao watches from a distance. Later at the base, Samuel accuses Murdoch of trying to cover up America's mess at the expense of Rambo and the prisoners, which Murdoch considers a practical decision. He threatens Samuel to keep quiet, but Samuel warns him of Rambo's capabilities, which may fail Murdoch's plans. Elsewhere, Rambo is held suspended in a mud pit at the prisoners of war camp when a party of Russian forces arrive in a helicopter, led by Lieutenant Colonel Podolsky, who orders Rambo to be cleaned up and brought inside for interrogation. Inside, Podolsky orders Rambo to radio his headquarters, accept the charges of espionage, and make his government promise to never attempt such an incursion again. However, Rambo does not comply, so Podolsky orders his man named Yushin to torture him till he agrees. At night, Bao infiltrates the camp by posing as the delivery girl while Rambo is tortured by Yushin through electrocution, but he remains resolute and refuses to betray his people. Podolsky informs Rambo that he was intentionally abandoned by his people, which they discovered by intercepting the radio conversation between the rescue chopper and the American headquarters, so his pain has no meaning. They continue to torture him but are still not able to get information. So Podolsky instructs his men to bring up the prisoner Rambo rescued and threatens to gouge out his eyes in front of Rambo. On the other hand, Bao brings down a Viet Cong soldier and sneaks around the camp to find Rambo's whereabouts, while Rambo gives in to the demands of the Russians when they are about to harm the prisoner. Moments later, the radio is set up for Rambo to contact his headquarters, while Bao manages to find the hut where Rambo is being held and hides under the floor. Rambo reaches out to the headquarters as people gather around the radio upon receiving his signal. Samuel asks him his location, but Rambo sees Bao through the gap in the floorboards and asks for Murdoch, whom he threatens to kill. He suddenly attacks Podolsky with the mic and throws Yushin into a fully powered-up electrocution machine. Meanwhile, Bao shoots the Vietnamese guard through the floorboard as Rambo escapes through the window. They both then try to escape the camp through the stream while the soldiers give chase. Rambo fires back at them and manages to slow them down while escaping through a barbed wire fence. And the chase continues out in the forest as the Russians use their chopper to hunt them down. In the morning, Samuel hopes for Rambo's return at the base while Murdoch also contemplates the possibility of Rambo's return and the threat he may pose to him. Meanwhile, Bao and Rambo rest by a stream while the chopper is busy searching for them in the forest. Rambo thanks Bao for saving him and agrees to take her with him to America as the two get intimate, but when they set off from their hiding spot, they are shot at by Vietnamese soldiers. But Rambo fires back, killing most of them. However, Bao is badly shot and dies from the injuries in Rambo's arms. Meanwhile, Samuel urges Murdoch to send in a rescue team to save Rambo, but Murdoch refuses to take the risk for just one man. When Samuel protests against it, Murdoch places him under arrest, deeming him just a tool to get his plan successful. Later, Rambo pays his last respect as he buries Bao in the forest and decides to avenge her. When the Russians, along with the Vietnamese, arrive at his location, he starts taking them out one by one, leaving them clueless, as they are not able to find him due to low visibility caused by the rain. He continues taking them out using his bow and by blending into his surroundings, until a large force pins down his location and chases him across the forest. Eventually, he is forced to run, where he stumbles upon a local village, but the villagers flee and hide upon seeing the arriving soldiers. Rambo finds himself cornered in the village, as a truck full of reinforcements arrives at the village, surrounding it from all sides. He thus slips into the sugarcane plantations nearby, and the soldiers follow his trail of blood only to find that Rambo tricked them with a butchered chicken and gasoline. Rambo ignites the gasoline, engulfing the plantation and the soldiers inside in flames. He then fires explosive arrows at the compound as well as the army vehicles, unleashing destruction on all sides. Moments later, the leader of the Viet Cong search party sees him fleeing across a rocky waterfall and fires at him, but fails as Rambo blows him to pieces with an explosive arrow. Just then, the Russian chopper flying over the waterfall fires a heavy explosive, which Rambo avoids by jumping into the water. The Russians next shoot up the water with a machine gun, but when they get close to the surface, Rambo grabs onto the gunner and kills him, and then gets into a scuffle with Yushin while the other pilot flies the chopper away. Yushin overpowers Rambo, but Rambo flips him over to throw him down from the chopper and then takes control of the chopper from the pilot, who jumps off it himself. Rambo flies towards the camp and unleashes his wrath upon them, blowing it all up except the prison cells. The soldiers try to fire back at the chopper, but Rambo decimates the whole camp with heavy fire and finishes off the rest by getting off the chopper and taking them out with a machine gun. He then rushes to the prison cell and releases all of the prisoners, guiding them to the chopper. Podolsky sees all this and pretends to be dead to get a shot at Rambo, and when he fires at him, he misses and hits a prisoner while Rambo fires back to finish him off. Rambo flies away with the prisoners, but a Russian combat chopper pursues them, firing missiles at them. Rambo skillfully dodges the missiles while a prisoner returns fire, but they are eventually shot down and land in the middle of a river, where Rambo pretends to be dead. Just when the chopper gets closer, Rambo quickly fires an RPG-7 launcher at it, blowing it up to pieces. He then flies the compromised chopper towards the base and radios them for an emergency landing, which Murdoch is unable to deny. Thus, Samuel orders them to prepare as Rambo arrives at the base and lands the chopper safely. While the soldiers help the prisoners, Rambo grabs the heavy machine gun from the chopper and charges towards the hangar. He sees Samuel and Erickson on the way, and when Erickson congratulates him, Rambo beats him down and then proceeds to enter the hangar, where he blows up the operations center with his machine gun. After which he enters Murdoch's office, where Murdoch waits for him timidly and apologizes as soon as Rambo enters. He claims that he was only taking orders and did not know that the mission was going to turn out that way. But Rambo holds him by the neck and slams him on his desk, saying that his mission has been accomplished. He claims that Murdoch must know about other prisoners of war in Vietnam, so he must find and rescue them, otherwise he will come back for Murdoch. When he goes outside, he sees the prisoners getting treated for their injuries, and the first prisoner he rescued salutes him for saving them. Samuel then comes over to Rambo and asks him to join the army, as he has nowhere else to go, but Rambo declines the offer, claiming that he loves America and it deserves to be treated with love. Rambo III starts with Samuel and a few men roaming around Thailand trying to find Rambo, while he himself gets ready for a Krabi Krabong match. People cheer for him when he enters the ring and start placing their bets while the two opponents circle each other. The match begins, and Rambo's opponent attacks first, but Rambo soon follows. So they both engage in a fight using the bats until the opponent lands a spinning back kick that pushes Rambo away. Rambo gets hit a few more times with kicks to his face and being locked in a chokehold before getting kicked in the stomach. Samuel reaches the crowd and observes the fight, in which Rambo soon gains control and flips his opponent before repeatedly hitting him. The crowd starts screaming louder, and Rambo pushes his opponent to the ground, ready to deliver the final attack, but the opponent accepts defeat and uses Rambo's help to stand up. They both acknowledge each other, and Rambo takes his winnings before heading to a small boat which has a few monks waiting for him. Samuel tries to move out of the crowd to follow Rambo, but the boat leaves before he can reach them, so he heads to a Thai Buddhist monastery, where Rambo has settled to help with construction work. Samuel asks him about the matches, and Rambo reveals that the monastery doesn't have any money, so he donates his winnings to them. Rambo questions who the men with Samuel are, and he reveals that one is Robert Griggs, a field operative at the U.S. Embassy, who shows Rambo a few pictures of disoriented children in Afghanistan. Griggs reveals that over 2 million civilians have been slaughtered by the Soviet Union Army in Afghanistan, but the Afghan forces are now able to hold against airstrikes. However, one region has an exceptionally brutal commander who has held off all outside aid, so Samuel has been instructed to go there, and he wants Rambo to accompany him. Rambo refuses and heads inside, but Samuel follows him, saying that he believes they can make a difference. Rambo reveals that he belongs to the monastery, but Samuel tells him that he was always a fighter and the army only refined him, so he should accept who he truly is. Rambo says he isn't ready, and apologizes for rejecting the offer.
A full-blooded combat soldier.
Not anymore.
I understand.
Meanwhile, the mission in Afghanistan fails on day one, as they are spotted by a helicopter and most of the unit is shot. while the few survivors including Samuel are taken prisoners. Later, Griggs visits Rambo again to reveal that Samuel has been taken as a hostage, so Rambo questions if he can unofficially be sent to Afghanistan, and Griggs agrees on the condition that if Rambo gets caught, the American embassy will deny knowledge of his existence. Rambo is fine with it since he is used to such treatment, and he is taken to Peshawar, Pakistan, where he heads to a gun shop to meet his first contact, Musa Ghani. Musa questions if he is military or mercenary, but Rambo refuses to be both and asks where the Americans are held. So Musa reveals that they are 50 miles away from the border and coast. Musa shows him the detonators sent by Griggs and asks when Rambo's team will be arriving, but Rambo reveals that he is on his own. Musa reluctantly agrees to take him alone, clarifying that he will take no responsibility and tells him that he should go back to America, as he doesn't seem to have any war experience, and Rambo doesn't correct him.
Come on, maybe you should go back home if you fail. Do not blame me.
I did think it over.
On the other hand, the Russian regional commander Colonel Zaysin calls for Samuel, feeling proud to have captured an American military officer, but Samuel refuses to answer him, saying he would be interrogated by his superiors. However, Zaysin says that here he doesn't have any superiors and asks Samuel to cooperate because if he reveals information about Stinger missiles, which he was sent to supply to the Afghans, Zaysin will arrange a way out for him. Samuel calls the Russians out for starting a war, but Zaysin believes they'll soon get complete victory, so Samuel tells him that the Afghans have never been enslaved in history.
Just a matter of time before we achieve a complete victory.
If you'd studied your history, you'd know that these people have never given up to anyone.
Meanwhile, Musa takes Rambo to the Afghan border while sharing the stories of past empires that tried and failed to conquer the land. They come across the plains patrolling the area, so Musa takes Rambo through the caves where he explains the history of the Afghans associated with the caves, saying that 5 strong soldiers are better than 500 weak soldiers. Rambo wonders how far they are from the fort, and Musa reveals that they are 2 hours away from the village. Elsewhere, the Russians start torturing Samuel when he refuses to give information, and Zaysin points a gun at him, but they are interrupted by an informant from Peshawar who reveals that John Rambo is on his way for a rescue mission. Zaysin decides to torture Samuel a bit more and starts preparations to capture or kill Rambo before he enters their territory. On the other hand, Musa takes Rambo to the first village, explaining that people here are all fighters who wait for weapons from the border, and that this village houses the only doctor in the next 500 miles. He takes Rambo to a large group meeting with Uri, a Russian defector, who explains the mines and the guarded spots of the Russian base, along with the possible ways to head inside the fort. Uri explains that they can get out of the sewers if they get inside, and Rambo suggests going through the minefields, as the Russians won't be expecting that, but the Afghan leader refuses because he can't lose all of his men. However, Rambo says that he only needs 2 men to lead him and 2 men to help him escape, but an Afghan explains that if Rambo only makes the prisoners escape, the Russians will target this village, killing everyone here. They ask Rambo to wait for help, but Rambo says that he would go alone. Just as Rambo is about to get up to leave, one of them named Masood explains that Afghans are resilient despite their children and women dying and being abused, adding that last year 6,000 Afghans were killed just in the nearby valley. He explains that his men, the Mujahideen, consider it an honor to die for the land, but they want to stop the killings of women and children, saying that if freeing Samuel would help the world realize the cruelty happening in Afghanistan, then they won't hesitate even for a moment. Masood tells Rambo to step out so the Afghans can decide among themselves if they should aid him or not. Musa tells Rambo about a young boy named Hamid whose parents were killed last year, and recently his brother was killed in the fort where Samuel is being held. Musa explains that Hamid is a very brave soldier, and Hamid starts looking at Rambo's weapons, asking about his knife curiously. Musa next shows him a group of men playing a sport where they have to catch a sheep and throw it in a circle while horse riding, and Rambo decides to give it a try. Rambo manages to get the sheep, so a person pushes him off his horse, but Rambo holds tightly onto it till riders swarm him, making him pull someone down a horse and get on it. He eventually catches hold of the sheep and is about to drop it in the circle when they notice the helicopters. They start dropping bombs and open fire, causing chaos and death around them all. Rambo urges his horse towards a building to hide, but seeing the war horrors, he rushes towards a machine gun and destroys a helicopter, forcing the other helicopter, piloted by Zaysin, to retreat. Once the sand and smoke start to clear, Rambo heads to Masood, who says that he is taking the survivors to the borders, and asks Rambo if he wants to join. But Rambo refuses as he is going to the fort. Musa says he will show him the way, and Hamid insists on staying, but they send him with the others. Later at night, Rambo moves through the minefield to enter the fort and tactfully hides himself from the security by avoiding the lit areas. They wriggle from under the tripwire explosives, but Musa almost gets stuck, causing Rambo to quickly grab the bomb to keep its pin in. Suddenly, he sees Hamid there and tells him to go back, but Hamid tells him to be quiet and passes under the wire. Rambo cuts a steel wire and tells Musa to go ahead, while holding Hamid back. but Hamid explains that he knows the way inside the fort, so they need his help. However, Rambo refuses and quickly rushes to the fort, where he sets 2 bombs with a 10-minute timer. He suddenly notices movement and finds a guard sleeping on his break, so Rambo quickly steals his gun. A guard spots Musa from the towers and uses his flare to alert the others, which results in guards rushing in that direction. But Rambo hides on top of a vehicle. Meanwhile, Samuel hears prisoners being tortured badly by the Russians and feels helpless in his cell. Outside, Rambo finds tanks heading inside and quickly jumps under them to hold the rope at the front and gets dragged inside with the tanks. He manages to enter the fort while Musa sets various other bombs nearby. Rambo realizes that the Russians are torturing prisoners with flamethrowers and electric chairs, so he places another bomb at the door. He quickly smashes the head of the guard into the wall and takes his keys, but just as he is about to free Samuel, Hamid shows up there, making Rambo alert. However, a guard arrives, and Rambo throws his knife at his neck while Hamid fires, which results in commotion. So Rambo starts shooting any Russian soldier that comes his way. The first few bombs that were set go off, drawing the attention of the soldiers outside while Rambo fights them inside. He throws bombs until a shrapnel stabs his stomach, but he pulls it out while Hamid gets shot. He then shoots the men after him and picks up Hamid before running out. He hands Musa the gun, who shoots at the Russians, and the 3 get inside the sewers. The Russians join them, so Rambo sets a 30-second timer on the bomb before quickly leaving the area and dunking down in water to avoid the explosion. He then breaks a small barred barrier to exit the fort, so they get to the horses, but the Russians open fire on them. Rambo then throws a missile at the fort front, while Zayson takes Samuel and questions him why he is important to Rambo, angrily saying that by dawn Rambo would be caught. On the other side, Rambo bandages Hamid's injuries and tells them to head back to Pakistan while he stays, but Musa refuses, saying that they should all go. However, Rambo insists they leave and gives his necklace to Hamid. Once they leave, Rambo pushes a large stick all the way through his stomach before pouring gunpowder over his wound and lighting it, quietly handling the intense pain while gripping onto a nearby rock. The next morning, Zayson sends out a large number of men to search for Rambo, while he himself flies a helicopter to look around. The men report no sign of Rambo, but Zayson orders them to keep looking till they find him. Meanwhile, Rambo climbs on top of a mountain and silently deals with the guard sitting near the machine gun, before slipping down into the fort from a narrow hole. On the other side, the men drag Samuel down to the torture cell, ready to use the flamethrower on him. But Rambo enters the room and kills the Russian officer. The informant from Peshawar is also in the cell and runs away while Rambo engages in a fight with another Russian soldier. Rambo defeats him easily, frees Samuel, and rushes to free more prisoners. After that, they hijack a landing helicopter and Rambo is about to fly the plane because he knocked out the pilot. But Zayson finds out and orders his men to shoot at them. A few Afghans get on the machine gun and fire back at the Russians, but the helicopter is damaged during takeoff, causing it to crash. Rambo and Samuel tell the prisoners to take any weapon they find before asking them to flee on foot and reach the border. The 2 head to the mountain, and Samuel asks Rambo about his wound. So Rambo replies that he was taught to ignore pain but is still having difficulty. However, Zayson starts searching for them, and an attack helicopter pursues them to a nearby cave. So Rambo tells Samuel to move forward while he destroys the helicopter with an explosive arrow. Zayson also gets near, but they jump inside a narrow hole to move down the cave using a rope. Zayson drops a bomb which sends fire down the opening, but Rambo manages to run from it. They decide to split, knowing that Zayson would send soldiers after them into the cave. Samuel apologizes for getting Rambo into this mess, but Rambo dismisses it and heads the other way. Zayson sends Spetsnaz commandos under Korov to kill them, and they find Rambo using their night vision glasses. But Rambo throws an arrow that kills the soldier. Zayson asks for the Spetsnaz to report back using the radio, but Rambo picks up the radio and tells Zayson that he is his worst nightmare. Rambo moves forward and kills another soldier after he activates a blue light, while Zayson asks Korov what is happening. Meanwhile, Samuel puts his hand over a soldier's mouth before breaking his neck. Rambo hits another soldier with a light attached to an arrow, making him scream, which catches the attention of other soldiers who shoot at him. Korov spots Rambo and opens fire, but Rambo sends out another explosive arrow, so Korov uses his comrade as a shield but still gets injured. A soldier is about to attack Rambo, but Samuel comes to his aid and shoots him dead. Rambo tells Samuel to head out of the cave as he will deal with the soldiers that are left, and throws a bomb at the last 3 living soldiers. Rambo starts climbing the rope to get out of the cave and finds Samuel at a distance just as his head pokes out of the narrow opening. But he is pulled out by an injured Korov who fights Rambo and initially has the upper hand as he throws Rambo down the mountain slope. However, Rambo pokes his fingers in Korov's eyes, making him scream. They get into hand-to-hand combat, but Korov is defeated and Rambo secures a bomb to him before pulling its pin, then ties a rope around Korov's neck and throws him down the cave where he dies in the explosion. Rambo and Samuel make their way to the Pakistani border and are only a valley away when Samuel expresses happiness at making it out of the country. But they are intercepted by Zayson and his large mechanized infantry. Zayson announces on a loudspeaker that they will only attack if they try to run, as they don't want to harm them, but only capture them. saying that they will give them a fair trial if they drop the weapons. However, Rambo refuses to back down and loads his gun, ready to shoot at them and die in battle. They start shooting at Zason's helicopter, saying they will take him down with them, while Rambo uses bombs to ward off the military. The soldiers fire at them endlessly, but suddenly they become distracted by something, making Rambo wonder what is happening. The next moment, Masood's Mujahideen forces, including Musa and Hamid, arrive to rescue them in a massive cavalry charge, and Rambo finds a machine gun to help the Mujahideen. Rambo next comes down and rides a horse with a bomb but gets shot, nearly losing his life. However, he stands back up and throws the explosive at a tank. He shoots the men coming out of the tank before hijacking it, and Zason sees Rambo getting inside the tank, so he immediately attacks it. Rambo fights Zason's Mi-24 Hind D as both unleash their vehicle's weaponry on each other, where Rambo manages to kill Zason with the tank's machine gun and destroy the Hind D with his tank's main gun. The fight ends with the tank and helicopter colliding with each other, and Rambo survives despite his injuries, relieving Samuel. Later, as Rambo gets ready to leave the country, Musa asks him to fight for them, and Hamid also requests Rambo to stay, but he refuses by saying that he has to go back. Rambo opens with a news report detailing a horrific civil war in Burma, where the ruling military regime is conducting a genocide of the Karen people to take control of their land's natural resources, and is brutally suppressing peaceful protests carried out by monks. Meanwhile, Rambo is busy catching snakes with two locals in Thailand to sell them off for money. Suddenly, he spots a cobra and distracts it with his stick, so he can grab it from behind to store it in a sack. He then gets into a boat with the locals and drives across the river, and they eventually arrive at a local settlement by the riverbank. Inside, he sells the snakes to the owner of a snake show, but the owner demands pythons instead of cobras. Rambo shrugs off his demand and walks off to empty the sack full of snakes into a cage. Meanwhile, a group of foreigners arrive and talk to the owner, who points them towards Rambo. One of them, named Michael Burnett, introduces himself as the representative of a church whose volunteers travel to Burma yearly to help the locals with medical and food supplies. For this purpose, he asks Rambo to take them up to Burma in his boat, but Rambo declines by saying that Burma is a war zone and the volunteers lack resources. Moments later, a female volunteer named Sarah approaches Rambo in his quarters to convince him to accept their offer for transportation, but he just tells her to go home. Elsewhere in Burma, a military truck stops by some fields and soldiers force helpless civilians out of it, urging them to run across the field for their lives, while avoiding landmines just planted by the soldiers themselves. The people desperately run across the fields as some are blown apart by the mines, while others are brutally shot down by the order of Lieutenant I, who is in command of the unit. Back in Thailand, Sarah again tries to convince Rambo to help them by appealing to his morality, while he is busy doing metal work, but he still denies the request. Meanwhile, Lieutenant I leads a night raid on a Burmese village and snatches away young boys from their families to be enlisted into his troops, threatening anyone who dares oppose him. In Thailand, Rambo finishes off his metal work and comes out of the hut for some fresh air in the rain, but sees Sarah waiting in his boat all alone, so he walks to the boat to ask her why she is still there. She replies that she wants to know his reasons for not helping them out, so Rambo tells her that human beings are animals who justify their lust for violence by giving it the name of nationalism, and everybody lies about it. He does not see a reason for taking them to their death, which upsets Sarah. Before she leaves, she claims that Rambo cares about people but is trying to hide it. Otherwise, he would have taken them to Burma for the money. She finally manages to convince him by asserting the importance of sacrifices, which she claims are never wasted. In the morning, they set out for Burma, and on the way, Michael tries to raise the morale of the volunteers by assuring them of their eventual success against the oppressors, while Sarah approaches Rambo and asks him about his life. The two talk about their lives and get along well, making Michael interrupt them out of jealousy. Sarah reveals that she is engaged to Michael, and she thinks despite Rambo's claim of living alone, there is something pushing him to continue living. Later, they arrive in Burma by nightfall and spot some people in a port by the riverbank, which Rambo claims to be a pirate base. He instructs them to stay down and avoid making noise so they can slip by the pirates unnoticed. However, the pirates spot them and follow them in their boat, making them come to a stop to avoid a fight. Rambo acts timidly and agrees to pay the pirates for safe passage, but they spot Sarah and want to take her along. Rambo tries to bargain with them, but when he sees no other way of saving her, he swiftly shoots the pirates dead. Michael objects to the killings and wants to abort the mission, but Sarah insists that they must fulfill their commitment and convinces Rambo to continue. In the morning, they arrive at their destination and get off the boat, with Michael informing Rambo that he can leave, as they will be taking the overland route for their return. He complains about the killings Rambo carried out, while Sarah hands Rambo a personal keepsake before leaving. Rambo also starts his return down the river, and on the way sees the boats on which he killed the pirates lying abandoned by the riverbank. On the other hand, the volunteers travel across land and arrive at a local village, while Rambo drives the pirate boat to a secluded area and drenches it in gasoline before setting it on fire, to wash his guilt and shame over the killings he unwillingly had to carry out. The boat explodes as he leaves the scene while the volunteers are busy helping the villagers with food and medical supplies, and Michael gives a sermon from the Bible to kids through a local interpreter. Moments later, Sarah goes up to a hut where a volunteer is treating the injuries of the young children handicapped by the war, and is deeply disturbed by their condition when suddenly the Burmese troops start attacking the village with mortar bombs, spreading death and chaos all around. Sarah grabs a child and runs to take cover as she sees people blown to bits in front of her eyes. The soldiers raid the village, brutally shooting and stabbing the villagers without any care, as even children and women are not spared. In the chaos, the survivors flee towards the fields, but a vehicle with a mounted machine gun shoots them down mercilessly, while Sarah survives as she falls over into the rice fields and stays down in shock. The soldiers then kill the remaining locals and take the volunteers into custody, as Lieutenant I watches the village go up in flames. Elsewhere, Rambo recalls Sarah's words of encouragement as he sits clutching the pendant she gave him. Meanwhile, the captured volunteers are taken to a military base and imprisoned beside pigsties. Later, Rambo is woken up from a nightmare about his past life by a man named Arthur Marsh, the pastor of the Church of Colorado, to which the volunteers also belonged. He claims to know that they are still alive through some mercenaries and Karen freedom fighters, who want Rambo to help rescue them. As he knows their last known location, Rambo agrees and asks the pastor to say a prayer for them, while he himself prepares for battle by forging weapons for himself. In the morning, Rambo sets off for Burma along with a group of mercenaries led by a man named Lewis, who are assigned the task of saving the volunteers. On the way, Rambo observes them as they argue about the situation in Burma and how bad a decision it was to enter Burma without weapons. Rambo stays silent when Lewis tries to ask for his opinion and then tries to provoke him, but they fail. Another one of the crew, named Schoolboy, reports that Rambo is a former soldier, an egomaniac like many other Vietnam War veterans. He then mocks him by saying that they ought to use their mind rather than just their strength in saving the volunteers. Meanwhile, Lieutenant I looks down through the floorboards at Sarah in her cage, and she questions his reasons for keeping them imprisoned, but he does not answer. Later, they land at the same bank where the volunteers had gotten off, and they are disappointed to discover that only 2 freedom fighters are waiting for them: a young man named Myant and a kid who he claims is a good tracker. Rambo wants to accompany them, but Lewis forces him to stay and take care of the boat while the rest leave for the rescue. The squad journeys through the jungle and arrives at the destroyed village from where the volunteers were taken. When they see death and destruction everywhere, some of them want to turn back while others want to continue. In the end, Lewis decides that they will check out the army base, and if anything goes wrong, they will turn back. Just when they are about to resume their journey, an army truck arrives at the village, and soldiers force civilians out of it, making them run across the field full of mines for their entertainment. The squad hides and observes the horrific game passively, but Rambo arrives and kills all the soldiers one by one with arrows as the civilians escape. Lewis blames him for getting them into danger and resolves to turn back, only to be forced to continue the mission by Rambo, who threatens to kill him otherwise. The squad sets off for the army base in the truck with Myant as a guide, and they arrive at night in heavy rain, where they plan to carry out their mission within 15 minutes after Schoolboy goes to his position with his sniper on top of a tower. The truck driven by Myant manages to slip inside undetected, and the squad members hop out of the truck to take positions all over the base. The Burmese soldiers are busy watching a stage dance while Rambo and others scan the base for the volunteers. Rambo notices some cages in the distance, and when he gets close he sees one volunteer hanging off a bar half-eaten by pigs while others are inside a cage. From there, he frees Michael and another volunteer, and instructs them to wait while he rescues Sarah. Meanwhile, the soldiers start harassing the female dancers on stage, while one soldier drags a dancer away under a hut, but the squad member Diaz arrives and kills him. Elsewhere, Rambo sees a young boy being taken to Lieutenant I's cabin and rushes towards it so he can get to Sarah, whose cage is right below it. A moment later, Schoolboy starts taking out the sentries on the towers, and the rest of the squad members move fast, securing the surviving volunteers and escorting them outside the camp. However, just when Rambo is about to reach Sarah, a soldier takes her away, prompting him to stay while telling Lewis to go on, who then forces the squad to start their return journey despite Schoolboy and Michael's protests. Nevertheless, Lewis imposes his will on them and prepares to leave. Elsewhere, the soldier is about to attack Sarah, but Rambo arrives and brutally kills him before he can do anything. They try to slip away unnoticed by the soldiers coming out of the dance show, but are spotted by 2 sentries who are about to shoot them. But Schoolboy, who has stayed behind, takes them both out with his sniper. They regroup with him and start to track back towards their landing spot. In the morning, the Burmese soldiers discover that the volunteers have escaped and quickly set off in great numbers with vehicles and tracker dogs to hunt them down. Meanwhile, Rambo patches up Sarah's injured foot on the way, while Lewis steps on a mine during the squad's return, setting off an explosion and alerting the army to their position. His leg is also badly injured, and Michael steps up to help him. Elsewhere, Rambo decides to split up from Sarah and Schoolboy to lure the army towards him and give them a better chance of escaping. Thus, he rips a piece of cloth from Sarah's coat, and Schoolboy fires a shot to get the army's attention, which starts to move towards them, with Lieutenant I even alerting a boat to their location. In the jungle, Rambo runs along, while the tracker dogs following Sarah's scent lead the army right after him. He finds a World War II-era unexploded bomb in the forest on his way and straps a claymore on it, while hiding it with leaves when the soldiers arrive. They trigger the claymore and the old bomb, causing a huge explosion, and luring the army boat away from the landing point, which the squad will be using to escape. Meanwhile, Schoolboy and Sarah get closer to the landing point and discover that the squad has been captured by the army, with a vehicle mounted with a machine gun standing guard over them. Lieutenant I lines up the squad and is about to execute them when Rambo arrives, taking over the jeep and using the machine gun to kill the soldiers. The squad members start to fight back in the chaos that ensues, while Schoolboy also starts taking out the soldiers. Diaz and Lewis are at the forefront in taking out many soldiers until a bomb takes out Diaz. Whereas Lieutenant I proceeds to move up and kill a volunteer. Michael sees all this, and when a soldier is about to take out Lewis, he tackles him and smashes his head in with a rock, despite his previous commitment to non-violence. Just when the squad and Rambo are getting overwhelmed, the Karen rebels led by Mine arrive and start blowing up the army with any weapon they have. In the chaos, I tries to escape while the army boat arrives at the spot and starts killing the rebels with a heavy machine gun and a flamethrower. The boat also targets and injures Rambo, who falls off the jeep but recovers in time to destroy an incoming truck full of soldiers and proceeds to barrage the ship with bullets that take out the helmsman. Elsewhere, Schoolboy headshots the machine gun soldier on the boat, and Mine uses a rocket launcher to blow up the boat. Meanwhile, I is seen running away by Rambo, who catches and stabs him, shredding up his guts in the process. The army is defeated and the remaining soldiers run away from the battlefield. Sarah sees that the battle is over, scampers down to the bank and starts looking for Michael, shouting his name as she walks through the battlefield. Rambo sees her from above as she searches for Michael, and eventually she finds him giving first aid to the injured. They embrace and bid farewell, thanking Rambo for saving their lives. Sometime later, Rambo returns to the US and walks along the road with a backpack. Finally arriving at his old family farm in Bowie, Arizona, Rambo Last Blood begins with 3 hikers getting stuck in a Category 2 storm called Telmar. So a large search mission is initiated, which John Rambo joins as a volunteer. He finds a dead woman and continues looking for the other 2 hikers, whom he soon finds waiting for help. He urges them to get on the horse, but the man named Jimmy insists he can't leave without his wife. Rambo informs him that she's already dead and they must hurry, but Jimmy storms off to look for her. Rambo sees the water coming downhill, so he quickly uses the rope to tie the horse and themselves to a large rock, which they also use as a shield from the incoming water. As the water level lowers, Rambo returns to the base with the girl, where the officer in charge wonders who he is. His deputy introduces Rambo as a retired soldier who often volunteers in search missions, as he's a great tracker. Rambo explains how he found the girl, but he couldn't save the other 2. So the officer informs him that they have found their bodies down the river. They appreciate his help, while the girl also thanks him for saving her life. Rambo returns to his secluded farm where he lives with his friend Maria and her granddaughter Gabriella. She gives him hot coffee, but Rambo feels guilty that he couldn't save the couple, just like he couldn't save his friends during the war. She insists he shouldn't blame himself because he can't save everyone and he's no longer in the war. The next morning, Rambo trains the horses and he thinks Gabriella will be a great trainer, but Maria reminds him that she will soon start college. He goes to the underground tunnel to do some maintenance, but he suffers from a PTSD flashback, so he tries to keep himself busy by shaping metal. Gabriella comes looking for him, and she wonders what he's doing. He shows her the new Damascus steel knife he prepared for her, and explains she can use it as a letter opener when she goes to college. She tells him that no one writes letters anymore, so he jokes that she can use it to hold the boys away. They both go riding, and she admits she's nervous about starting college. She asks if he knew what he wanted to be when he was her age, so he reveals that he always wanted to be a soldier. She tells him that she needs to leave early for her friend Antonia's party, so Rambo suggests inviting them all to their place, but she reminds him how he freaked them out last time with the constant staring. He suggests inviting them to see the tunnels, which excites her because he never lets anyone go in there. Gabriella's friends soon arrive and they have a great time while Rambo sits outside as he observes the tunnels. After everyone leaves, Gabriella starts cleaning while Rambo asks if they had fun. She admits everyone had a great time, but she needs to talk about something. She says that her friend Gazelle, who now lives in Mexico, has helped her find her father and she wishes to ask why he left them. Rambo warns her that Manuel was a bad person, but she doesn't believe it's that simple since people don't just act that way for no reason. She admits that she has heard stories about Rambo's past, but she thinks their worlds are very different, while Rambo insists hers is much worse. She asks him to trust her, so he assures her that he cares for her like a daughter, and she should wait until she knows more about the world. The next morning, Rambo hears Gabriella arguing with Maria, so he reminds her about their agreement last night to wait, but she apologizes that she just can't wait anymore. Maria asks how she found him, so she reveals Gazelle helped, but Maria thinks Gazelle isn't a good influence. She reminds Gabriella that Manuel was a bad person who never visited her mother in the hospital, and even used to beat her while Rambo was the one who looked after her like a father. She apologizes to Rambo and says she is going to Antonia's house, but on her way she changes her mind and turns to Mexico instead. Later she arrives at Gazelle's house, but as Gabriella tries to give her a gift for helping find her father, Gazelle teases that she isn't a charity case. Gabriella apologizes, but Gazelle admits she was kidding and offers to take her to Manuel's house while she stares at Gabriella's gold bracelet. Gabriella soon reaches the house, and as she knocks at the door, Manuel's wife opens it before her father comes to see who's there. He immediately recognizes her and wonders how she found him, so she admits it wasn't easy. He mentions that she was always smart and looks just like her mother, so she asks him directly why he left them. He confesses that he didn't love them, and after her mother died he didn't wish to waste time on a child he never wanted. Gabriella feels heartbroken and wishes to return home, but Gazelle stops her, insisting it's late and she's too upset. She takes Gabriella to a nightclub to distract her and introduces her to her friends, but a man named El Flaco spikes her drink when she isn't looking. The next morning, Don Miguel meets a man named Hugo Martinez who wishes to expand his operations into human trafficking. Hugo orders his brother Victor to give them privacy, but the two brothers get into a fight over who does more work. Maria learns about Gabriella's visit to Mexico and her disappearance, so Rambo takes Gazelle and Manuel's address before leaving to find her. Elsewhere, Victor gathers all the girls, including Gabriella, and threatens to shoot them if they try to run. Rambo reaches Mexico where he questions Manuel, but he claims to be clueless about Gabriella's whereabouts. Rambo realizes he isn't lying and leaves, saying he should have snapped his neck 10 years ago. Next, Rambo sees Gazelle, who doesn't recognize him, so he reminds her that they have met and he just wants to ask a few questions. She explains she took Gabriella to cheer her up, but she was too drunk and didn't notice when she left. Rambo reminds her that on the phone she claimed Gabriella never returned from her father's place, so she insists she was giving him a heads up, but Rambo accuses her of covering her tracks. He grabs her arm, asking how she got the bracelet because it belonged to Gabriella's mother and she would never give it to her. She urges him to leave, but he takes out his knife and threatens her into helping him. She fears for her safety, but he warns that there is no other option, so she takes him to the club and points at El Flaco. Rambo tells her to leave while he patiently waits for El Flaco standing in the corner, but a woman named Carmen notices him. As he leaves the club with his girlfriend, Rambo sneaks up from behind and places his knife to his throat. He orders the girl to leave and shows him Gabriella's picture, but the man says he doesn't recognize her, so Rambo stabs him and pulls out his bone. He admits he doesn't know where she is, but he can take him to who does. Carmen follows them as El Flaco takes Rambo to the house where Gabriella is held, so Rambo knocks him out before heading up. Rambo gets into the other building, and he sees Victor and his men having a party, but one of the guards notices him and alerts everyone. Victor invites some policemen to watch over the girls while the men begin to surround Rambo from all sides. Hugo and Victor Martinez arrive, and they find Gabriella's picture in his wallet, which makes them realize he came to save her. They demand to know his relationship with her, but he doesn't answer, so they start attacking him. He tries to fight back, but he's heavily outnumbered and severely beaten by them. Hugo tells them it's enough, and Rambo pleads with them to let her go. Hugo declares that although those girls mean nothing to him, he'll make an example out of Gabriella because of Rambo's failed rescue attempt. He decides to spare Rambo's life so he will think about her forever, but Victor insists they should kill him. They leave after carving an X mark on his cheek, and Carmen rushes to save Rambo. Victor is still angry that his brother didn't let him kill Rambo, so he punishes Gabriella and makes an X on her face. Meanwhile, Carmen takes Rambo to her house, where a doctor checks him and notes that because of the concussion he'll feel uncomfortable around strong lights and loud sounds. He believes Rambo will recover in a few days, but warns her that she shouldn't get involved in dangerous stuff. Rambo gains consciousness after 4 days, and he wonders how he got there, so Carmen introduces herself as an investigative journalist. She reveals that she was following El Flaco when she saw their encounter, so she followed them there. He asks about the men who took Gabriella, so she tells him about the Martinez brothers who also took her sister and eventually caused her death. He asks for her help, and after some reluctance she agrees to take him there, where he enters pretending to be a customer. Rambo takes out a concealed hammer and starts smashing everyone who comes in his way, before making his way upstairs where he tries to free the girls, but they're too scared to run. He finds Gabriella, but she's passed out, so he carries her to the truck. The Martinez brothers learn about her escape, and Victor blames Hugo for sparing Rambo earlier. He takes his men and leaves in Rambo's search, warning Hugo that next time they should do things his way. Back with Gabriella, she apologizes to Rambo, but he insists it isn't her fault and they'll be alright. He reminds her of the past, how she won multiple events on the same day, and how she gave him a reason to live when he returned home. He urges her to keep her eyes open, but she is unable to hold on any longer, and dies in his arms. He takes her body back to Maria, who is devastated to learn about her death. They bury her at the ranch, and he urges Maria to go to her sister's house, as there's nothing left for them there. She wonders where he'll go, so he admits he will just move around like always. She asks if they'll ever meet again, so he assures her they will, and she leaves, confessing her heart is dead. Rambo starts preparing mines around the property, and he prepares several booby traps to stop intruders. After all preparations, he returns to Mexico and visits Carmen, who warns that he shouldn't be there as it risks both their lives. She wonders if he found Gabriela, so he reveals she's dead and he needs to find Victor. But she insists they should move on with their lives. He refuses to give up, and his firm resolve to punish the ones responsible for her sister's death convinces her to help him. She takes him to Victor's house, and Rambo quickly takes out the guards stationed there. He carefully makes his way to Victor's room, where he's taking a shower. The next morning, Hugo finds his brother's decapitated body with Gabriela's picture pinned to his chest. On his way back home, Rambo drops Victor's head on the road while Hugo prepares his men for revenge. Rambo frees all the horses, anticipating a strong reaction for killing Victor. As Hugo's men storm the ranch in their cars, they trigger the mines, creating a large explosion that blocks their path. They get out of the vehicles and start walking toward the house, but as the first man enters through the main door, an arrow gets triggered to finish him. Rambo briefly comes out of the tunnel entrance and shoots down another man, so they all start shooting in that direction. The other team gets near the barn, so gasoline sprinkles on them before Rambo shoots at it to create a large explosion, which burns them, but he continues to shoot the burning men. Hugo takes his men and enters the tunnels, but Rambo evades them and grabs the weapons he had placed at different points. A man accidentally hits a wire, triggering a trap, so Rambo comes from behind and blows up his head. Another attacker comes right in front, but Rambo takes the first shot and kills him before loading explosive ammo to finish two more men from behind. He runs out of ammo, grabs a pipe, and pierces it through a man's skull. His companion shoots at the wall, so Rambo lies down and cuts his legs with a machete, making him fall before stabbing him in the neck. He starts playing music through the speakers to make them more agitated, and uses this distraction to kill more enemies. He takes a position waiting for them to come within the range of an explosive he had planted, and as they get closer, he blows it off, killing them instantly. Two more men fall through the floor and get impaled with sharp rods before he shoots at them. Rambo continues to skillfully take out Hugo's men with ease. And as they enter a dead end, Rambo removes the wooden pillar, leaving them trapped, but he gets shot in the process. Rambo contacts Hugo through the radio, telling him that all his men are dead and he could have killed him several times, but he wished to save him for last. He urges Hugo to follow the lights if he wishes to live as he activates the bombs, collapsing the tunnel. Hugo gets blasted to the surface and he starts looking for Rambo, who shoots at him with several arrows, pinning him to the wooden wall. Rambo then cuts him open before ripping out his heart and ending him. Rambo limps back to his house where he sits in his chair and remembers how he was living in the world of death and tried to come home. But he never really arrived. However, his heart was still always at this place where he was born, where he defended the only family he ever had till the end. He knows that everyone he has ever loved is dead, but he will keep fighting to keep their memories alive forever.